All right. Hi, guys. Thanks for watching. This is Molly here in the digital newsroom at WTTG Fox 5 DC. You can see I'm hanging out here midday, bringing you all the live events and cool current trending news. Today's topics, a lot of stuff happening. Last night, former President Obama received an award at the JFK Foundation in Boston. I'm going to bring you that little video clip to see what he had to say. Also, right now, happening live, I'm going to bring you right here in just a few moments. You saw the promo on the bottom of your screen before we started. DC law enforcement are being honored. It's an annual tribute, and the mayor of DC there, Muriel Bowser, is there, as well as the police chief, Peter Newsham. Down in near police headquarters in Washington, they're there to honor the fallen officers from this year, a tribute to 5 fallen officers specifically, but also just an annual tribute from the mayor and the new police chief now, Peter Newsham. We have a couple other cool things for you too. I'm going to bring you some behind the scenes video of something that I went to this weekend that's been a cool trending topic. But for now, let's bring you over to that live event so we catch it. Our reporter, Bob Barnard, is over there. He's going to get the scene and sort of take it in. Just remember, this is all going to be live, raw video. So it has the potential to change at any second and just be sort of all over the place, but that's what you get when you get it live in the moment. So here we go over to this fallen officer law enforcement tribute in Washington.
I didn't put mine all up in your face like that. I know. Oh, for heaven's sakes.
This makes me feel like I'm home in Colorado.
All right, guys, if you're just joining us today here, you're watching live footage of the 38th annual memorial service for local law enforcement. So this is where the mayor herself, Muriel, is going to be speaking along with the police chief. This is outside police headquarters, and they do it every year to honor the fallen heroes of our local law enforcement here. Now also the mayor will be joined by the police chief this afternoon. They'll be addressing public safety concerns in Ward 8, which is currently and historically the most crime-ridden ward in Washington, D.C. So they'll be there doing a walk in the afternoon around 3 o'clock. But for now, this morning, they're here for this ceremony. You can see our camera is live, getting all the action in following this ceremony around. This is always held at the beginning of National Police Week, which is today. So it starts it off right here, and you can see our video is just going to be in and out here, gathering the footage of what this ceremony entails. So thanks again for joining us on Fox 5 Live. We'll keep it here for a little bit longer and then bring you some other live and breaking and trending news in our area.
You guys should start at your shiny shoes. This is a better one. Okay. Enjoy yourselves, gentlemen. Where are you from?
England, from Hampshire, in the south of England.
That's where I'm from. That's my fault.
Where Andy works. So.
Yeah. Do you like Cambridge?
I do very much.
Did you go punting? You got one of the punts on the river?
Yes.
Very good.
Did you fall in?
No, I didn't.
Ah,
No,
good.
I didn't.
Good. Good. That's always a bonus.
Yes, yes. that you get the prize.
Correct.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here on a beautiful Monday morning. My name is Allison Starling from ABC 7 News, and I'm honored to be here this morning as we honor heroes, plain and simple, people who gave the greatest sacrifice. We are also here to thank their family members and their friends, though of course our thanks can't begin to ease the pain that you've experienced. We have relatives here from honorees from this year, but also from past years, people who have come back to support other survivors. And we want to also thank them for coming, whether they lost a loved one in the 80s or 90s, or Miss Gibson, who has done so much for police officers for the last 20 years. We thank you all for being here this morning. We're honoring 5 special heroes today. Corporal Jakai Colson of Prince George's County Police Department. It's been said he had an infectious smile. He had a tremendous personality. Jakai could light up a room, and he lit up everybody's life that he met. Corporal Harvey Snook of Arlington County Police Department. It's been said about him, he was a really good man and a very, very good policeman. It was an honor and a privilege to work with him and for those who called him a friend. Senior Deputy Mark Logston of the Harford County Sheriff's Office. Friends say he was a mountain of a man. Someone who was louder than anyone else in the room, and someone who was prone to quoting the movie Dumb and Dumber, sometimes at the most inappropriate time. He was a combat veteran. He was a great golfer, and he would have welcomed a baby granddaughter who was born just 1 year ago, baby Aubrey. Senior Deputy Patrick Brian Daly, also of the Harford County Sheriff's Office. He had 30 years of service to the department. He was very proud of his two sons, Tyler and Brian. And Tyler and Brian say like they feel as if he is still here protecting them. And finally, Police Officer Ashley Gwendon of Prince William County. She loved to fly, she loved to dance and read and travel. Her family says she was always there for her community, volunteering with the Suicide Prevention Program and helping at the soup kitchen on Thanksgiving. Such profound losses for our community, but they each made our world a better place. Now, if I could ask you to please rise for the presentation of colors, followed by our national anthem.
You guys are watching a live coverage of the 38th Annual Memorial for Fallen Officers. This is taking place right here outside of DC Police Headquarters. We're going to hear from DC Police Chief himself, Peter Newsham. We believe he is there helping to host this event, as well as the Mayor of DC and Montgomery County, Maryland's Police Chief as well is there. You just heard the voice of one of the anchors from ABC 7. She's hosting the beginning of this event. And like I said, this takes place every year at the beginning of National Police Week. So we're getting it here live footage from our photojournalist and one of our reporters who is also there on the scene, all happening right here live on Fox 5 Live. Stay with us for more coverage.
Ready? Cut. Freeze it. Oh!
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag
4. Oh. 1.
Stand by. Left. Wait. Forward. Mark.
Thank you to MPD Officer Tanya Shukhair for that beautiful rendition of the national anthem, and also our Lieutenant Virginia Fedor from Gallaudet University. And now DC Police Department Chaplain Monsignor Sal will join us for the invocation.
Let us now bow our heads in prayer. God our Father, our Creator and our Maker, we gather here this morning for the 38th Annual Washington, D.C. Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Service. Today we remember and give thanks for the men and women of law enforcement who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Today we especially remember those 5 officers who were called home this past year. Lord, we pray that they are truly at peace in their eternal kingdom. And today, Lord, we ask your special blessings upon their family members, their loved ones who have been left behind. Let them know, Lord, that they are not left alone. Let them know that you are always with them, as well as the men and women of law enforcement who will be there for them for all that they need and all that they do. We pray, Lord, for all the members of law enforcement to continue to watch over them on a daily basis. We make the prayer today as your loyal and faithful servants, always called upon to do your will. And in his name, let us say, Amen.
And please be seated. Here now to welcome us is Andy Mabo, President of the FOP DC Lodge Number 1 and officer with U.S. Capitol Police.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, distinguished guests, Chief of Police. To the families of the 5 that we're here to honor, along with the past survivors that are present today, our heartfelt condolences and sympathies go out to you. On behalf of the Fraternal Order of Police, DC Lodge 1, I just want to welcome everybody to this 38th memorial service, which we're hosting today. One of the things that I've learned in my short career in law enforcement is that when an officer is killed, it's not just the police department that mourns, but the entire nation. And for the family of the 5 officers here who we're recognizing today, I want to let you know that we'll never forget, and you'll always be part of our family here in DC. If you have the opportunity, stand up and look behind you. Look at the number of officers lining behind you between now and forever. Okay, we'll always be by your side. So with that, I welcome everybody. I thank you all for being here. And God bless all the fallen.
Andy, thank you. And now DC Police Chief Peter Newsham to join us with some opening remarks.
Okay, good morning, and welcome to the 38th Annual Washington Area Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Service. Thank you for being here today in remembrance of our fallen brothers and sisters who made the ultimate sacrifice. This week is a special time for law enforcement in America. This week, we reflect upon the great sacrifices made by a few for so many. We also get to say thank you to all of those who continue to serve our community for their dedication, their commitment to community, and their willingness to give their lives on the behalf of others. Over the past few years, policing in America has been demonized by some. There seems to be a purposeful attempt by some to attribute the bad acts of a few in policing to everyone who wears this uniform and everyone who wears this badge. To those of you who have done this, I say, shame on you. I have worked in this profession for the better part of my adult life, going on 28 years, and these negative stereotypes of law enforcement officers are ill-conceived, hurtful, and blatantly unfair. The men and women of law enforcement that I have come to know throughout my career are hardworking, committed, compassionate, and selfless. In fact, we ask them to be superhuman. During an 8-hour tour of duty, we call on them to act as a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, a mediator, a therapist, a parent, a priest, and all the while we ask them to be the guardian. They are required to take on these roles under the most stressful and difficult circumstances that life has to offer. And they do it on a daily basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they're happy to do it. I've always admired the fact that law enforcement officers run toward danger when everyone else is running away. But what I really admire and what I like the most about the people who work in this profession are these few things. When the weather turns bad, a hurricane, a snowstorm, a flood, or a tornado, they come to work. When people speak poorly about them or to them, they come to work. When people unfairly disparage their profession, they come to work. When people injure them, and people do, they heal, and then they come to work. And when one of their brothers or sisters is killed in the line of duty, they wipe away the tears, and they come to work. Today, we will hear the stories of 5 of these heroes from our region who worked in this profession and paid the ultimate sacrifice. Their stories will be illustrative of the honorable people who work in this profession. We are here to salute them and the lives that they lived. We are here to express our heartfelt condolences to their families, and we are here to pledge that we will never forget them. Thank you. Now it gives me great pleasure to welcome a staunch supporter of law enforcement and the leader of our great city, the Mayor of the District of Columbia, Mayor Muriel Bowser.
So if you're just joining us, guys, you're watching this coverage of the DC Mayor. She's right there at the podium coming up, and that was Peter Newsham, the new police chief of Washington, D.C., here to honor these fallen officers. They do this each year as part of National Police Week. Let's hear from the mayor right here.
And the great appreciation, not only of the residents of this city, but the residents of the entire region. I am humbled to be here today, as we've gathered here in years past, to honor the fallen men and women of local law enforcement who've kept us safe. The thing that we know is that Washingtonians will travel to Montgomery County and Prince George's County and Arlington County and points all across this region. And we know then that they are protected by the men and women of the forces that protect this entire region, as they are here by the Metropolitan Washington Police Department. When we hear that an officer has given and made the ultimate sacrifice in an effort to protect us and everything we hold dear, it is always challenging to accept. One thing I know is that wherever an officer has been stricken down, our police department is there to support their families and their department as well. We should all take comfort in knowing that we are strong people and we are a stronger region and a stronger nation because of the heroism displayed by these officers. Their unwavering dedication to our communities, the work they did to serve children in schools across our entire nation, and the sacrifices they make to our nation's families are gifts, and gifts that we are so appreciative of each and every day. We know that law enforcement is a family affair, and these officers say goodbye to their families each and every morning with the intent to do a hard day's work, protect their residents, follow the law, be compassionate, but make sure our communities are safe. And their strong desire is that they will be able to return home at the end of their shifts. We know that they take their commitment to the Constitution and the pledges they make when they become officers very seriously. And we take very seriously defending them as well. One of the most important ways we can do this is to make sure that we honor their lives. Remember who they were. Recognize their passions and the dreams that they had for themselves and their own families. Remember them when they were in their uniforms and when they were not. Today, we honor Corporal Snook. We honor Officer Grundon. We honor Corporal Coulson. We honor Senior Deputy Daly and Senior Deputy Logston. We hold their families dear, and I know from watching our own department with families of fallen officers that you can count on these officers and your departments to stand with you each and every day and never forget your sacrifice.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. And now our keynote address this morning will be given by Chief Thomas Manger from the Montgomery County Police Department.
Good morning. Ms. Mayor, thank you very much for your remarks. I know that every police chief, every sheriff represented here is so grateful for the support that we get from our chief elected officials, and it means a great deal to us, your being here. Thank you. And welcome to all the men and women of law enforcement. Welcome to my colleagues. Welcome mostly to the surviving families. Each year we gather to honor our fallen. We gather at this beautiful fountain that was built 75 years ago to honor the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department. We gather here at this fountain now as it honors all of law enforcement in the Capital Region. Today, we honor 5 more men and women that have been added to the list of our fallen. Every year, we celebrate, at this time of year, we celebrate the lives of our colleagues who made the ultimate sacrifice. And just as important, we honor the surviving families. This fountain is a solemn place to remember your wife, your husband, your brother, your sister, your parent, your child, your friend, your loved one. Here today, we are all a part of something that is bigger than just us. We are members of a police family, a family that we joined when the men and women that we honor here today first pinned on their badge. That's when we joined this family. That's why you will forever remain a part of this family. And I thank all of the surviving families for being here today.
For many of you, this is a very emotional day. Some of you, when you got up this morning, looked in the mirror and asked yourself, can I do this again today? To those of you that are hurting, please know how much it means to every member of your police family that you're here. Your courage, your strength is an inspiration to all of us. This ceremony is a way that we can provide and preserve the legacy of all of the men and women whose unselfish service and ultimate sacrifice kept us safer. We thank all of them for their service. We talk about what they did. We recognize what they accomplished. But these heroes should not and will not be defined by their end of watch. Every person we honor here today left a legacy. For some, it was the strength of a spouse or a partner, a strength that that person never knew they had. For many of us, it's the children who survived our fallen, who grew up to live a life that would have made their mom or dad so proud. Sometimes these legacies just take a little bit of time to develop. I'm reminded of a police officer who was killed in the line of duty 84 years ago in Montgomery County. In 1933, Patrolman Webb Hershberger was riding on his police motorcycle when a car traveling in the opposite direction crested a hill on the wrong side of the road and hit Patrolman Hershberger head on. He was killed instantly in the collision. Patrolman Webb Hershberger was married to a young school teacher. They had a son, Webb Jr. Webb Jr. was not even 1 year old at the time when his father died. Mrs. Hershberger knew that she needed to continue her career as a school teacher in order to raise her young son. She worked hard and thrived in her career, and she raised a son who excelled in school. And 20 years after her husband's death, Mrs. Hershberger was a school principal of an elementary school in western Montgomery County. Her son, Webb, was in college in Pennsylvania. It was the early 1950s, and Mrs. Hershberger made a decision at her school to allow the African American children who lived in the area around her school to attend that school. Her decision to integrate that school was met with angry protests from the PTA and threats from the parents whose children went to that school. But she stood strong and kept the school open to every child in her community. So you see, her husband, Patrolman Hershberger, wasn't the only hero in that family. His wife found the courage she needed to persevere even after her husband's death. And I believe that the strength that she got from her husband helped her with the courage that she needed to do the right thing for those children in Montgomery County. So whatever happened to young Webb Jr.? It turns out that he remained in Pennsylvania and he went on to medical school. He had a remarkable career as a trauma surgeon. I had lunch with Dr. Webb Hershberger Jr. just last week. He's well into his 80s, and he's retired now. But he still teaches, and he still consults. He had an amazing career and is still renowned in his field. Principal Hershberger and Dr. Hershberger are part of the legacy left by Patrolman Hershberger. A few years back, I joked with Dr. Hershberger and I said that, with parents that were as great as his mother and father, that it was a good thing that he was successful in his career. And he smiled and then got a serious look on his face,
and he told me, and I quote, the past has lived with me and serves as my guide. I pray that the sacrifice of your loved one inspires and guides you. Their service should inspire all of us to live a life of significance and to leave a fitting legacy in their honor. On days like today, at ceremonies like this one, we will always feel sorrow. But to all the survivors that are here today, I promise you that we will honor your sacrifice every day, and we will never, never forget. God bless all of you.
Thank you very much, Chief Major. And now it's time to honor those officers in the Washington area who paid the ultimate sacrifice in 2016. Chief Hank Stawinski is here now to honor Corporal Ja'Kai David Colson from the Prince George's County Police Department.
Good morning. Mayor, Chief Newsham, thank you very much for this 38th honorary ceremony. Ja'Kai David Colson was a courageous man, more so by the responsibilities he undertook as a Prince George's County police officer. You see, we all serve and we all are familiar with danger, but undercover narcotics work lends an air of uncertainty and an intimacy with danger that other aspects of policing do not always carry. And when 3 individuals launched a senseless attack on our community, firing randomly at citizens and at fire and EMS personnel, and then ultimately at Prince George's County police officers, Ja'Kai acted courageously and drew that fire to himself, allowing his brothers and sisters to act and neutralize that threat to all who were in the vicinity of our district station that day. That loss is fresh. And Adrian, I appreciate you being here this morning and your grace as we have all tried to come to terms with this most difficult loss. Someone so bright and so promising. And while that pain is fresh, I also hearken back. I can scarcely imagine what Ivy Hill Cemetery was like in September of 1937, when Edward Dennis Merson was laid to rest, the first Prince George's County police officer to lose their life in service to others. What Chief Jeremiah Crowley might have said, but certainly did say, was that Edward's sacrifice would never be forgotten. Edward served in World War I, a horrific conflict, and was lost to us all before the Second World War. Lawrence Binion wrote of that conflict the following: "They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them." And indeed, I am as committed to that as all of the chiefs who led this great agency before me, as all of the chiefs and sheriffs and agents who are represented today, and all of you who have also come forward on this glorious day to remember those who have been lost in this uniquely human endeavor that is policing. And so I will leave you by saying Godspeed to those of you who serve today, and God bless all of those we have lost along the way. Good morning.
Thank you, Chief. And please now welcome Chief Jay Farr to honor Corporal Harvey Snook III with the Arlington County Police Department.
Good morning. You know, I'd like to thank the mayor. I greatly appreciate you coming out today, members of the FOP, and every one of our brothers and sisters that are here today to celebrate the folks that we have lost in the last year. I couldn't help but as I came out of the car and started walking towards the service today, look at this absolutely gorgeous, beautiful day, and sort of think this is sort of how the story I'm about to tell you started. This is a little bit about Corporal Harvey Snook, the officer and the person. Corporal Harvey Snook passed away on January the 14th, 2016 as a result of cancer contracted while working in the rescue and recovery operations at the Pentagon following the attack on September 11th in 2001. If you remember, it was an absolutely stunningly beautiful day. Corporal Snook was working patrol when he responded to the Pentagon after American Airlines Flight 77 struck the Pentagon at 9:38 a.m. He remained working at the site for the following week, collecting evidence and the remains of the victims. In 2014, he was diagnosed with a cancer directly related to these recovery efforts. Corporal Snook's response that day encompassed who he was, as a person and as an officer. He was a dedicated public servant who always put others before himself. He was devoted to the well-being of his fellow officers and was known as a person that brightened any roll call room or squad. And I can tell you on a personal note, if you started to talk to Harvey for 1 minute, that was good for an hour conversation. It is his kind and generous nature that brought friends, families, and neighbors and officers together to help care and watch over him during his courageous battle with cancer. I am humbled by the compassion shown during the final year and a half of his life. It is clear that those who loved Harvey were committed to providing him the same generosity he has shown so many throughout his life. And while we continue to mourn the loss of Corporal Snook, we are blessed to call him friend, colleague, partner, and most of all, brother. God bless him. Thank you.
To pay tribute to Senior Deputy Patrick Brian Daly and Deputy First Class Mark Franklin Logsdon of the Harford County Sheriff's Department, here is Sheriff Jeffrey Gaylor.
Good afternoon. I'm Harford County Sheriff Jeff Gaylor, and on behalf of the 600 men and women of the Harford County Sheriff's Office and the families of our fallen heroes, I would like to thank Chief Newsham and Mayor Bowser and the Metropolitan Police Department, all the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department, as well as the FOP, for today's ceremony and for this wonderful and fitting tribute to all of our fallen heroes, which include Senior Deputy Pat Daly and Deputy First Class Mark Logsdon from our Sheriff's Office family. On February 10th, 2016, our office responded to a call for service of a suspicious individual at a local Panera Bread restaurant. Senior Deputy Daly, although not assigned to patrol, actually assigned to civil process, he was not dispatched to the call. He was the first to arrive on the scene, jumping in to assist patrol as he so often did. Senior Deputy Daly walked into the restaurant and engaged the suspect in conversation when, without warning and without provocation, the suspect produced a handgun and shot and killed Senior Deputy Daly. As the suspect fled on foot, numerous policing units from our agency, as well as allied law enforcement, converged on the area and began to establish a perimeter. Included in the massive response was DFC Logsdon, who, although assigned to community policing and not assigned to patrol, also did not hesitate in his response to the scene. Thanks to the bravery of a patron of the restaurant who actually followed the suspect on foot out of the restaurant, a small area was quickly locked down. As DFC Logsdon and other law enforcement deputies and officers began converging on the parking lot, the suspect, who had now entered the driver's seat of his vehicle and had leaned the seat all the way back, began firing in DFC Logsdon's direction. DFC Logsdon was able to return fire and keep the suspect's attention as other deputies armed with patrol rifles were able to close in and open fire, ending the threat and ending the suspect's life. Prior to being killed, the first 2 rounds from the suspect's weapon struck DSE Logston. The first was stopped by his ballistic vest. However, the second would take Mark's life. Our Sheriff's Office family and our survivors were changed that day. There's not a day that goes by that we have not thought of the tragic events of that day and of that call. There's not a day that we have not thought of Pat and Mark, and there's not a day that we have not felt their loss. We also know and we recognize that we are not alone. Being with all of you here today, being a part of this ceremony, and recognizing our heroes, all of our fallen heroes, is so much appreciated and so touching. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Gaylor. And finally, Chief Barry Barnard from the Prince William County Police Department to honor Police Officer Ashley Marie Gwendon.
All right, guys, just checking back in with you. You're watching the 38th annual memorial for fallen heroes, fallen officers here in the DC community. We're hearing from multiple different police chiefs from around the DMV area. We'll go to this last one here, this last police chief who is honoring the 5th person, the 5th officer who died in 2016. And then we'll bring it back here into the studio and share some other stories with you. Thanks for watching.
Ashley's uncle and aunt, Mark and Stephanie Gwendon, who are here with us this morning. Ashley was a New England lady. She went to high school, grew up Massachusetts, New Hampshire, somehow found her way down to Florida, went to college, Embry-Riddle University, where she had an interest in aviation. We heard a few words earlier about her passion, and indeed, that is so true. She had a passion for life. She had a passion for everything she got involved with. Volunteering, going to school, finding us. She interned with us a few years before she came on board as a police officer. She was in the Marine Corps Reserve for a number of years, where she served so well. She was passionate and enthusiastic about what she did, and she loved law enforcement. She embraced police work. When she was in the academy, she worked so hard. She was so enthusiastic about it. She did so well. She wanted to make a difference. She exhibited the finest qualities that we have in law enforcement: integrity, honesty, commitment, passion, courage, heroism. Friday afternoon, the day before she was killed, she took an oath of office at around 3 p.m. at the courthouse. You can find a copy of that oath in the records of the courthouse. And in there, she promised to faithfully carry out her duties. We've all taken a similar oath. She took hers that Friday afternoon. Saturday, she was in a field training status when she and 2 officers responded to a domestic disturbance in the Woodbridge area. Her commitment, her passion, her courage put her at that house where we lost her that evening. And the 2 officers were also seriously wounded. So I leave you with the message that when you think of taking an oath, or you see the next graduating class raise their hand and take that oath of office, think of Ashley, think of those values that she brought forward and her passion and her commitment. We didn't have her for very long. Our family, of course, misses her dearly. She was 28 years old. We thank her for her service, and we thank all the heroes that we honor today. God bless the peacemakers.
Now, as is tradition, it is time for the roll call of heroes. To read the names today: Bonnie Cannon, the president of the DC FOP Lodge Number 1 Auxiliary, and Hector Didymo, national board member and Atlantic Region trustee with the Concerns of Police Survivors.
Good afternoon. At this time, you're welcome to place a flower at the memorial fountain in honor of your hero as the names are read. To receive a flower, please see a member of the committee located at the rear of the tent.
Metropolitan Police Department, Gail A. Cobb, Alfred V. Jackson, Richard F. Gagreri.
All right, guys, if you're just joining us, this is
Arthur
the 38th annual memorial for local
Snyder.
law enforcement. You can see our photojournalist
Donald
is there getting
G.
this live raw video, so it might kind of jostle
Robert
around a little bit.
K.
But this should be the final sort of ceremonial event here, this roll call of officers. This is all happening right downtown in DC at MPD headquarters. And we heard from DC Mayor and our police chief himself, Peter Newsham. They are a duo that will be together again this afternoon. They'll be doing a public safety walk this afternoon in Ward 8, which is the most crime-ridden ward of the DC metropolitan area. And so we have our photojournalist there and our reporter getting some more information on this event. We wanted to bring it to you live on this beautiful spring day, but we're going to come back into the digital studio in a moment here to bring you the rest of the news today. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll finish up here for just a few more minutes.
Sims, Brian T. Gibson, Oliver Wendell Smith Jr., Robert Louis Johnson Jr., Thomas F. Hamlet Jr., John S. Ashley, Clifton Rife II, Joseph Pizzell, James M. McBride, Gerard W. Burke Jr., Wayne Pitt, Paul M. Didymo,
DC Department of Corrections, Carolyn Cross, Ronald Richardson, Amos Williams. Metro Transit Police, Harry Davis Jr., Marlon Francisco Morales. United States Capitol Police, Christopher Eney, Jacob Chestnut, John Gibson, Clinton Holtz. United States Park Police, Ricardo Preston, Hakeem Asim Farthing, Michael Bone. United States Secret Service, K-9 Maxo. United States Postal Inspection Service, Robert Jones Jr. United States Marshal Service, Bucky Burke. United States Department of Commerce, Dwayne Christian. United States Department of Veterans Affairs Police Gary Ross. Department of Defense Pentagon Police James Feltus III. Walter Reed Army Medical Center Police Volney Forney. Drug Enforcement Administration Becky Dwoski. Federal Bureau of Investigation James McAllister. Stanley Ronquist Jr. Martha Dixon Martinez. Michael Miller. William Christian Jr. Christopher.
All right, guys, we are back here in the studio. Thanks for watching that live coverage of that memorial ceremony here in Washington, D.C. at MPD. Our photographer was kind of just rolling out of that shot, so we wanted to make sure we had that for you live this morning. But a lot of talk, of course, of courage amongst the police officers and the units and the multiple police chiefs who spoke. We're talking about courage and sort of a running theme here. Last night, changing gears a little bit, former President Obama was awarded the Profile in Courage Award from the JFK Library, which is actually outside of Boston. He was given the award in Boston in a ceremony, and it was interesting. We have a little video of this too. He, for the first time, really sort of spoke a little bit of his opinion, at least politically, since he's been out of office, on what all is happening currently, RE, the healthcare transitional bill and whatnot. So we heard a few words of his opinion there, and I want to bring you that video, just a little couple-minute clip of him receiving the award and his little speech sort of butted together last night in Boston. So once again, this was the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation's Profile in Courage Award. And JFK's brother, Ted Kennedy, was big on healthcare reform, so that all kind of links together. And former President Obama made his remarks on courage and hoping that Congress would essentially take courage in making the decision in affording people the opportunity for healthcare. So let's take a look at this video from last night. You can see there Caroline Kennedy presenting the award and Michelle by his side. Let's take a listen here.
In which President Kennedy led us. Because for many Americans, I know that this feels like an uncertain and even perilous time. The forces of globalization and technology have upended many of our established assumptions about the economy. They've provided great opportunity, but also great inequality and uncertainty for far too many. Our politics remains filled with division and discord, and everywhere we see the risk of falling into the refuge of tribe and clan and anger at those who don't look like us or have the same surnames or pray the way we do.
Everyone here now knows this great debate is not settled, but
Continues. And it is my fervent hope, and the hope of millions, that regardless of party, such courage is still possible. That today's members of Congress, regardless of party, are willing to look at the facts and speak the truth, even when it contradicts party positions. I hope that current members of Congress recall that it actually doesn't take a lot of courage to aid those who are already powerful, already comfortable, already influential. But it does require some courage to champion the vulnerable and the sick and the infirm, those who often have no access to the corridors of power. I hope they understand that courage means not simply doing what is politically expedient, but doing what they believe deep in their hearts is right. And this kind of courage. Thank you all very much. May God bless you. May He bless these United States of America. Thank you. Do I take it with me? You'll pack it up?
So brief remarks there that we had put together in a video of President Obama from last night. I wanted to make sure I brought that to you guys. So it's just interesting to hear his opinion, I think, during this time. We covered sort of the healthcare repeal and replace, the vote in the House last week, a lot on our show. We brought it to you digitally on our Facebook page, on our web stories, also in our TV broadcast. It's a big story, and we're going to have to see what happens as it gets handed over to the Senate, and Obama, making those little insinuations about what it took for him to make those changes and what he believes should go on for all Americans. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit too and go back to another trending story. Have you guys been continuing to follow this Rockville alleged rape case? We covered it for weeks and weeks, and it became a big national story with all its implications about illegal immigration. The 14-year-old female who was allegedly raped in a bathroom by two illegal immigrant males, ages 17 and 18. Now, the big news now is that the rape charges have been dropped on those students, and we heard earlier this morning on our morning show from one of the students, the male students' attorneys. And we're going to hear, I want to show you this interview now, just about the rape charges being dropped and what the implications are now for this student. They're apparently they're trying to press child pornography charges, but we did find out through some of our reporter investigations this weekend that the defense attorney for the student that they're looking to press these charges on for says those pictures were sent willingly by the 14-year-old female, and that this was a big consensual situation. So let's hear now from that interview from this morning about what could happen, and that deportation potentially is likely if these male students are found guilty on child pornography. Listen here.
It's not just your client, but both of these clients. And then Friday we find out that at least the rape charges would be dropped. What happened in the meantime?
Well, that's right. This is basically Duke lacrosse all over again. And the only difference from that case to this case is that the prosecutors in this case acted honorably. What happened was the prosecutors invested a tremendous amount of time and effort in investigating many witnesses and the cameras and the text messages. And we also conducted an extensive investigation. And the prosecutors looked at it very carefully. And after about 60 days, unfortunately, my client had to be in jail for that long. But after 60 days, they decided there was just not enough evidence to go forward, which in short means my client Henry was innocent.
Innocent by the way that the prosecutor viewed it, but your client, to my knowledge, never really said that he did not have sex with this person, right?
That's exactly true, and he was not old enough to qualify for statutory rape, so he was completely innocent of all criminal charges in relation to the sexual relations.
All right. Okay, so first of all, let's continue on this thread right now. Pornography charges, have they been filed yet? Will they be? Was this all part of any type of agreement here on behalf of you and the courts?
They have been filed, and it was absolutely not part of any agreement whatsoever. We were extremely disappointed that the prosecutor chose to file these child pornography charges against our client. Essentially, it's the criminalization of adolescents in America. So this is fair warning that all children with cell phones in high schools and parents that pay the bills for those cell phones could theoretically be subject to the prosecution that my client is facing right now, and that's just very disappointing.
So that then was based on photos that were sent cell phone to cell phone?
Well, that's the allegation, and we intend to fight these allegations in court, and we're hopeful that a jury in Montgomery County will acquit Henry of all the charges.
All right, so what is the status right there as far as what happens with these new charges, as far as court proceedings, et cetera, and what, I guess, game plan do you have now with this client based on these newest charges?
Well, the first step is that we're going to file a motion for a bail review hearing, and that will occur this week. And we're hopeful that a Montgomery County judge will do what happens in every case like this. The client will be released, and then ICE will most likely pick up Henry, and he'll be transferred into immigration custody, and then he'll be entitled to another bail review in immigration court, and we're hopeful that he'll get out. Now, keep in mind that ICE was the one that held Henry for 14 days, investigated his background, investigated whether there was gang ties, and decided to let him go and release him into his family's custody or family's care in Rockville. And he enrolled in school legally. ICE knew where he was, and he was behaving properly and didn't get suspended and was just living a normal life.
Does that change, though, now with these criminal charges and now being under the scrutiny of the legal microscope in addition to the ICE microscope?
It certainly does. If he's found guilty of these charges, it'll be very difficult for him to stay in the country. When we win these charges, which I expect we will, he still has to face the deportation proceedings in immigration court, and I'm confident that we'll have a very good legal argument to keep him in the country, but you never know with immigration these days. Things are tougher for immigrants around the country given the new administration's policies.
Mr. Jezik, let me ask you this, and when we go back to the bigger picture here, because anytime that you have a sex crime in itself, it is a very difficult situation. It's a very emotional situation, particularly when you're talking about the ages of these people. 18 years old for your client, 17-year-old for the other suspect in the case, 14-year-old for the victim. You were a prosecutor for a long time. You've been on both sides of these issues. Is the law written correctly when it comes to cases involving particularly juvenile rapes?
I think the law is written correctly because it's clear. You've got to be 4 years older than the victim, and that's been the law in Maryland for decades, and nobody's really complained about it. As a matter of fact, in other Western states, the law is more favorable to the defendants, believe it or not, and Maryland has kept the law as it is, which some people think is too draconian, but that's the law, and I think it's fair.
All right. Well, it's certainly, it's certainly a talk. It's certainly something that just becomes not just even a litmus test, but really it just sparks a lot of debate. It sparks a lot of emotion anytime you have this, particularly when something happens in a school itself. You mentioned as far as the future of your client here, have you talked with your client recently? Do you still have access to your client now, particularly with these new charges coming up?
Oh, sure. He's in Montgomery County Detention Center, and we see him as often as we can. He's thrilled that the state has chosen to do the right thing. He's maintained his innocence from the beginning. We've maintained his innocence from the beginning. And he's just looking forward to vindicating himself with these new charges and also hopefully being able to win an immigration court. But basically, he's very thrilled. He's very thankful for the prosecutors for doing such a thorough and professional job in deciding to null pros the case, dismiss the case. And in our parlance, that means he's innocent.
And you mentioned if things do not go your way and he is convicted of this new charge, you did say it would be more difficult, obviously, for him to stay in the country. If so, would he have to register as a sexual predator?
He would. It's complicated, but it's very likely that he would have to register. But if he's found guilty, he's very likely to be deported.
All right.
So it wouldn't matter anyway. He'd be back in his native country in Guatemala.
Andrew Jezik, the attorney for Mr. Henry Sanchez. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's 8:12 right now.
So interesting interview. That was from our morning show, and you saw on the left Steve Shenevy, our anchor there, interviewing Andrew Jezik, one of the lawyers, and Henry Sanchez's lawyer in this Rockville case that we've been hearing about for what seems like forever now. And I thought it was interesting how he opened up saying this is another Duke Lacrosse case. If you guys remember that huge case and what that became and the fallout from that, that's what he's sort of equating it to, which is pretty interesting to me to equate that. But yeah, just some interesting facts coming out of this, and we'll have to see how it all tapers down and if he does get off these child pornography charges. But like I said, what we know now is that this appears to possibly have been a consensual thing, and maybe we'll just slide under the rug. We don't know. I'm going to bring you back now downtown to check out this footage of the Metropolitan Police Department honoring fallen soldiers. We have some beautiful shots here on a beautiful spring day, and we'll see how long we have this live camera up down here at this ceremony. Take a look.
Duties to the other employees, and then home for the day. That would be our routine for a day. Little did we know that our daily routine would shortly be blasted from under our feet. On October 30th, 2010, my world stopped for a split second, but it seemed it lasted an eternity. It was a little past 1 a.m. when the telephone by our bedside rang. It was a Metropolitan Police Department officer informing us that our son Paul was seriously injured in an automobile accident while on duty. He also added that Paul's wife Shauna asked that my wife Teresa and I be contacted so that we might go to the hospital with her. When we arrived at MedStar Hospital, we were informed that Paul had died. Mayor Bowser, Chief Newsham, Monsignor Sal, fellow survivors, co-workers and friends of all the fallen officers, we are honoring this ceremony today. Good morning. I am honored to be the immediate past president of the Washington, D.C. chapter of Concerns of Police Survivors, a COPS Atlantic Region trustee, and a COPS National Board member, and one of the hosts of this very special annual memorial event during National Police Week. I wish to thank Andy Mabo of the FOP, Captain David Augustine and Lieutenant Nicole Webster of MPD, Bonnie Cannon and Patty Ciccato of the FOP Auxiliary, and the other members of the Memorial Service Committee for making this event a success. Most especially, I thank you for attending. Whether you are a surviving spouse, child, parent, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, nephew, niece, co-worker, significant other, or a friend, our life as a survivor is changed forever. If you are looking for my claim to fame in your program, you won't find it. I've never played any sport, starred in a movie, run for any political office, developed any new software programs, or served in any law enforcement position. I'm the husband and dad who was perfectly content having served my country in the Army for 23 years and federal service as a civilian with the Department of Defense for 20 years. And then after retiring, staying home, serving the Knights of Columbus, my church, and watching our family grow. All of that changed on October 30th, 2010, when our son, Paul Michael Dinamo, while responding to a call for assistance, was killed in a vehicle accident in the line of duty. Police and the media camped outside and sometimes inside our house. Paul's picture was splashed across TV sets and on the front page of numerous newspapers, and our lives changed forever. Our Paul is the seventh of our 8 children. He had graduated from culinary school, and he opened his own very small pizza sandwich shop. After 3 years, Paul decided that being a restaurant owner didn't give him the life of service that he craved. He convinced me to retire from civil service and become the restaurant manager, freeing Paul to attend the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department Academy graduating in February of 2010. He was assigned to the 7th District. 8 months later, he was dead. On the Saturday before his accident, Paul and his wife Shauna found themselves browsing Babies R Us, having discovered just that morning that they were expecting their first baby. My wife Teresa and I found out about the good news on the way to the hospital the morning Paul was killed. Alexander Paul Didymo turned 6 years old next month. He now goes to kindergarten, and he has his daddy's kind blue eyes. He knows that his daddy is a police officer and that he is in heaven. Alex is fascinated by the solar system. Since the planets are in the sky and heaven is in the sky, he firmly believes that his daddy is a policeman on Jupiter. Paul continues to be with us. He continues to get us into situations that we never dreamed we'd encounter, like standing here today speaking to you. Paul has been honored by many agencies. We have many plaques, citations, certificates, and letters, and they are all very much appreciated. But when we go home at night, it is still our son who is in the cemetery. It is still Shauna who puts Alex to bed every night by herself. It is still Paul's brothers and sisters who will never feel whole because one of them is missing. And it's still Alex who waters the flowers on his daddy's grave. I've learned a lot about law enforcement since 2010. I've learned that they are human just like the rest of us. They come in both sexes and various sizes and colors. Their size depends on whether you're looking for one or trying to hide from one. Cops are found everywhere, on land, on the sea, in the air, on foot, on horse, and in cars. In spite of the fact that you may not be able to find one when you want one, they're usually there when it counts most. The best way to get one is to pick up the phone. Cops deliver lectures, babies, and bad news. They are required to have the wisdom of Solomon, muscles and nerves of steel, and the disposition of a lamb. On TV, some cops are oafs who couldn't find a bass fiddle in a phone booth. In real life, though, a cop is expected to find a little African girl about so high in a city of 750,000 people. In fiction, cops get help from private eyes, mystery writers such as J.B. Fletcher, amateur detectives such as Father Brown, reporters, and whodunit fans. In real life, mostly all they get from the public is, "I ain't seen nothing." When they serve a summons, they are a fiend. If they let you go, they are dolls. To little kids, they're either friends or boogeymen, depending upon how the parents feel about the police. When cops are good, people say they're getting paid for it. When they make mistakes, they're monsters. When they shoot a wild person in a park who is wielding a gun, they're heroes, except when the wild person ends up being a teenager with a toy gun. Many cops have homes covered with mortgages. Usually their credit is good, and that is very helpful because their salary isn't. Cops raise lots of kids, many of whom belong to other people. A cop sees more misery, bloodshed, and trouble than the average person. Their uniform changes with the weather, but their outlook on life remains the same, hoping for a better community and hoping for a better future. Cops like days off, coffee, and donuts. They don't like auto horns, family fights, and suspicious packages. They must be impartial, courteous, and always remember the slogan, "At your service." This is sometimes hard when some surly character reminds them, "I'm a taxpayer, I pay your salary." Cops get certificates and medals for saving lives, stopping drunk drivers, and shooting it out with bandits, but too often the certificate or medal is received by a grieving spouse or parent or sibling. The most rewarding moments come.
All right, guys, so this is live video, what you're watching now, of the parent of a fallen officer speaking now towards the end of this ceremony that we've been bringing you this morning. Bottom right of your screen, you see the setup for the White House press briefing. Now, we heard from Sarah Huckabee Sanders on Friday, if you guys remember, if you were with us. She is the deputy press secretary, and she led the briefing on Friday and answered all the questions. We'll hear from Sean Spicer a little earlier today than normal, about almost 1 o'clock here. And that is coming up shortly. Now, I want to turn your attention to another story that is getting a lot of talk on social media. Check this out. If you guys saw this, possibly on social, this is a big one. A woman was in a Trader Joe's in Reston, Virginia, that's nearby. This is all allegedly happening, and again, it's what we know is all we know, and we have it on our website. A lot of stations have been sharing this and covering this, but apparently comedian Jeremy McClellan posted this video that his friend, a Muslim woman, allegedly shot in this Trader Joe's involving another woman and her racist comments to this woman. Check out this video here and tell me what you think.
So you play dumb, and then you say that everybody's great. Okay. I got it.
Shouldn't have let you in front of me.
Don't want to.
Sorry.
I wish I didn't let you in the country.
Excuse me? Huh? I was born here. I don't know if you...
Oh, you were?
Okay.
Obama's not in office anymore. We don't have a Muslim in there anymore.
Yeah, I wish he was.
He's gone. He's gone.
Yeah.
He may be in jail, too, in the future.
You look a little crazy. Maybe you need to get some help.
Oh, I'm fine.
No, you're not. Because you don't just strike up a conversation with people in line talking about stuff like that if you're normal.
I'm very normal.
Yeah, it looks like it. I can tell.
What set you off, Obama?
So that's all we have of that video, but it's been passed around endlessly, and apparently on Sunday night it had about 1.8 million views from this person who posted it first, comedian Jeremy McClellan. You can look it up, you can find it there, and allegedly his friend is the one who shot this video, and the woman that you saw there, the blonde woman, apparently started talking about female genital mutilation, and then the Obama comments as well. So apparently we don't have really the whole story or the whole footage. The woman who shot the video has, for now, declined to speak to media outlets, so we have not heard more about that, but hoping to kind of investigate this further, and just really wow that this is right next door, Reston, not too far away from here in Washington, D.C. So definitely an interesting story to keep up on, to perhaps find the identity of this woman and what spurred her comments. We had a reporter in the station on this actual story this morning on our morning shows, talking about what we know of the posting of this video and what happened. And I think the comedian who posted it wants to make this woman famous, and is kind of like, hey, here it is, spread the word, share it out there. So definitely a trending topic today, making its rounds. We're going to bring you back to the White House press briefing room, where we're awaiting Sean Spicer. Should be any second now. Here's the inside of the White House.
That in the view of President Obama, they were just better people for President-elect Trump at that time. National Security Advisor, of course, this news broke a few hours after President Trump tweeted once again that it's the Obama administration that is to blame for Michael Flynn. Tweeted earlier this morning, General Flynn has given the highest security by the Obama administration for the fake news seldom likes talking about that. So, of course, we have talked about that time and again. We just reading just a couple of weeks ago, where we went round and round with our press secretary Sean Spicer, who was trying to make the case that listen, that yes, there wasn't betting that went on inside the Trump transition, but they were relying in the White House on the Obama administration, which had done a security clearance on Michael Flynn in the early months of 2016. And they were essentially saying, and President Trump was essentially saying that he was saying, oh, why would we have to worry about Michael Flynn when he was vetted by, cleared by the Obama administration? So it's not too surprising, I think, Wolf, that, you know, when you're going to forget all going on in the White House at time and again, that Obama administration officials had given a security clearance to Michael Flynn. I think eventually it was just going to happen that Obama administration officials were going to say, oh, by the way, President Obama warned President-elect Trump about Michael Flynn 2 days after Donald Trump was elected to be President of the United States. I think it is a significant story, obviously, because...
Check back in with you here in the studio. So we're waiting. Sean Spicer coming up a little early today. He changed his time at 1:30. FBI Director Comey will be speaking at the Anti-Defamation League's Leadership Summit. So I had that on the radar to watch, but it turns out the time's shifted a little bit. So Sean Spicer coming up a little earlier than that. And I have another special video to bring you to another really interesting topic, a trending topic, and my own experiences from this weekend. So I'll bring you that shortly after this briefing. Should start any minute now, and we'll hear the updates about the president and what he's working on today and his sort of weekend event schedule and what all happened this past weekend. So stay with us here on Fox 5 Live, and be sure to continue to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, of course, and Twitter, Fox 5 DC. Follow our updated web stories. We're posting all the time, updating those stories. You can follow along and tweet at us, Fox 5 DC as well. And if you're watching here on this YouTube stream, don't forget to click subscribe so that you can watch and see when the live events pop up and when we are streaming live throughout the day to find all your breaking news and trending events of the day. Okay, we're going to go back into the White House briefing room, and this should be coming up very shortly.
When the former retired general, the soon-to-be national security advisor, was having a conversation with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, about these Russian sanctions that had become obviously a huge problem for the Kremlin that they were hoping the Trump administration would provide some relief on. And then, of course, there's the entire saga of how Michael Flynn did not tell the truth to Vice President Pence, who went on to the Sunday talk shows, and said, oh, no, Michael Flynn did not talk about Russian sanctions. He didn't do anything wrong, and then that turned out to be bad information, and that was essentially why Michael Flynn was fired. But this is just another example, Wolf, of this sort of drip problem with Michael Flynn for this White House, and I expect that it will dominate a big part of the discussion during the briefing today.
Too many jokes on that one.
You said it, I was like, how many presidents in the world have you seen? The briefing room I shot, it's such a good morning. 2 minutes.
All right, guys, if you are joining us here, we just heard the 2-minute warning for Sean Spicer to come out for the daily White House press briefing. His time moved up a little bit slightly from his standard 1:30 time. We're looking at likely some comments about President Trump tweeting out his congratulations to Emmanuel Macron, who won the French presidency yesterday over the weekend. And of course, an update on the president's events and his weekend and what that all looked like. So we will be hearing from Sean Spicer rather than the Deputy Press Secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who we heard from on Friday, in a little interesting change there at the podium. So just less than 2 minutes here to go, and we'll be streaming this to you live. And if you're catching us on YouTube, don't forget to chat us up in the comments, in the chat section, if you want to talk to us and tell us what you think about everything. And feel free to check in on our Facebook page as well, where we'll be streaming this, and you can comment below to let us know what you're feeling about it all. And don't forget to click subscribe on our YouTube channel as well, so you can see when we come on live and you won't miss any live coverage. You'll be warned ahead of time. So coming up next, Sean Spicer. I'm going to jump out of the shot here and leave you inside the White House, and that will be coming up very shortly. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Continue to stay with us after the briefing for more coverage.
By November 20th.
So then you can feel confident.
Very, very tremendous. These are the days of our lives.
Hi guys, thanks for your comments here on the Facebook chat. Feel free to engage with us and leave your comments below. We are coming up on less than a minute here. Sean Spicer will be taking the podium for the White House press briefing. So thanks again for joining us, and stay here for complete coverage of this live event.
And it's, I'm hoping that I still. So the judge was on the bench, the two attorneys on both sides.
Good afternoon. I want to thank my colleague Sarah for standing in on Friday. She did a great job. I missed you all tremendously. Now that I've realized that we can do that a little more, I'll spend a little more time at the Pentagon. Move this up a little bit. I appreciate your flexibility today so that the pool has enough time to cover the Vice President and Secretary Shulkin as they welcome honor flight veterans to Washington on the anniversary of VE Day. The Vice President is hosting more than 120 veterans of World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War as part of National Military Appreciation Month and Public Service Recognition Week, highlighting the Trump administration's commitment to our military and public service. Also today, the Vice President, Secretary Price, Secretary Shulkin all attended an event on the scientific opportunities of biomedicine. Key leaders from government, the private sector, and academia discussed the United States' comprehensive biomedical landscape and further educated White House staff, including assistants to the President Ivanka Trump and Reed Cordish, on this important topic. The meeting was organized by the National Institutes of Health and was led by its director, Dr. Francis Collins. Leaders in the medical education and research joined executives from companies who invest in biotech to provide analysis and real-life examples of how America's sustained leadership in the biomedical industry has resulted in immeasurable benefits to both our country's economic and physical well-being. Among the participants were Bill Ford, the CEO of General Atlantic, Dr. Craig Thompson, the president of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, Dr. Cornelia Bargman, the president of science at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, Dr. Mark Tessay Levine, president of Stanford University, and Dr. Rick Lifton, the president of Rockefeller University. The United States currently sits atop the list of global investors in innovation in the life sciences, responsible for 44% of global research and development. This investment is dependent on the NIH and the important research it funds. In order to maintain our international leadership in biomedicine, we must strengthen the partnerships between government agencies, investors, academics, the biopharma industry, and research foundations. This meeting was an important step in reinforcing that essential cooperation. Moving on, I'm pleased to announce that today, shortly after this briefing, we will release a list of the President's third wave of federal court nominees. These 10 individuals that the President has chosen were chosen for their deep knowledge of the law and their commitment to upholding constitutional principles. 2 of the nominees today came from the list of potential Supreme Court nominees that the President released during the campaign. If confirmed, Justice Joan Larson will be a Circuit Court judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. Justice Larson is currently serving on the Michigan Supreme Court. And Justice David Straz will be a Circuit Court judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit. He currently serves as a justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court. The campaign list was put together from input from the Heritage Foundation as well as the Federalist Society. And as the President said last September when it was released, these, quote, highly respected people are the kind of scholars that we need to preserve the very core of our country and make it greater than ever before, end quote. The President followed the principles that were used to guide that list to select the additional 8 individuals. And as I mentioned, the full list should be out very shortly. In terms of the President's schedule for today, this morning he met with his National Security Advisor, General McMaster. He also spoke with the French President-elect to congratulate him on his victory. A readout of that call should be out very shortly. The Prime Minister of Georgia was also at the White House meeting with the Vice President. The Prime Minister then dropped by with the Vice President into the Oval Office to greet the President. And earlier this afternoon, the President had lunch with the Vice President. In about an hour, he'll meet with Secretary of State Tillerson. Secretary Tillerson has also been meeting with several foreign leaders today at the State Department, including the Prime Minister of Montenegro, the Foreign Minister of Slovakia, and the Foreign Minister of Qatar. Secretary Mattis is also meeting with many foreign leaders during his European trip this week to reaffirm key United States military alliances. The Secretary is in Denmark to co-host a meeting with the Danish Minister of Defense with senior leaders from 15 countries that are key contributors to the de-ISIS military campaign. While in Copenhagen, Secretary Mattis will also meet separately with the Minister of Defense to discuss European security and the importance of the NATO alliance, and with the Danish Prime Minister to reaffirm the close ties between Denmark and the United States. In other cabinet news, Secretary Zinke is in Utah today, continuing his 4-day listening tour on the Bears Ears National Monument and Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, putting into action President Trump's April 27th executive order to review these monuments. Secretary Zinke will be accompanied by the governor and member of Utah's congressional delegation and local stakeholders for a morning aerial tour of the million-plus-acre monument and an afternoon hiking tour and a roundtable meeting this evening with Friends of Cedar Mesa Museum. While in Utah, the Secretary and other officials are holding daily press briefings on the ground. You can reach out to the Interior Department for more details. And with that, I'd be glad to take a few questions. Kristen.
John, thank you. Former President Obama warned then President-elect Trump against hiring Mike Flynn as his national security advisor. Why did he ignore that warning?
Well, the president doesn't disclose details of meetings that he has, which in this case was an hour-long meeting, but it's true that President Obama made it known that he wasn't exactly a fan of General Flynn's, which is frankly shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that given that General Flynn had worked for President Obama, was an outspoken critic of President Obama's shortcomings, specifically as it related to his lack of strategy confronting ISIS and other threats around that were facing America. So the question that you have to ask yourself really is, if President Obama was truly concerned about General Flynn, why didn't he suspend General Flynn's security clearance, which they had just reapproved months earlier? Additionally, why did the Obama administration let Flynn go to Russia for a paid speaking engagement and receive a fee? I mean, there were steps that they could have taken that, if that was truly a concern more than just a person that had bad blood.
And I want to follow up on a couple of points because you raised the security clearance. But before that, if a sitting president raises the name of one individual, why wouldn't that give the president-elect pause? I understand what you're saying, the caveats about the fact that he campaigned against Hillary Clinton, etc. But wouldn't that give the incoming president pause?
Well, I think I don't know that I agree with your characterization. He made it clear that he wasn't a fan of his, and I don't think that should have come as a surprise, considering the role that General Flynn played in the campaign, criticizing his.
Didn't give him any pause at all.
No, I think you if you know what we knew at the time, which is that the security clearance that he had been reapproved in April of that year, and they took, not only did they reapprove it, but then they took no steps to suspend it. So the question has to be, what did they do if they had real concerns beyond just not having, not liking him for some of the comments that he made?
It's our understanding, and if you could clarify this, did Mike Flynn not need upgraded security clearance in order to serve as the national security advisor?
Oh, he'd been head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's the same.
You vetted him as well, correct?
That's the same clearance that the security clearance. We went over this a while ago. It's the same clearance at any level. Once you get it, you get it for the time that you had. He had his reinvestigation in April of 2016, and the Obama administration took no steps. Not only did they reaffirm that security clearance, they took no steps to suspend it or take any other action.
But did you not vet him yourselves?
Well, you don't vet on a security clearance. That's why you get a security clearance. Everyone in the government goes through the same process. So the answer is that that same process worked for General Flynn as it did for me or for anyone else who works here. There's no difference of a security clearance once it's issued. Zeke.
Thanks, Ron. You said a few minutes ago, Christian, what we know is what we knew at the time. So knowing what the White House knows now, does the White House, does the president believe that General Flynn should not have had that clearance reissued last year, number one? And number two, does the White House believe that General Flynn was truthful when he filled out his SF-86 for that reinvestigation last year?
Well, I'm not going to get into those details. It was obviously that was something that was adjudicated by the Obama administration in April of 2016. They took no steps to suspend that. So that's not really a question for us, it's a question for them at that time.
Well, knowing what you know now, that's in the public
Yeah, I think the
record.
president took appropriate action when he did, once he felt as though General Flynn had misled the vice president, and he took appropriate and decisive action at the time, and he stands by that today.
Did his ties to Russia, did his work as a registered foreign agent, now registered foreign agent for the government of Turkey, lead to his firing in February?
Well, again, I don't think we're going to re-litigate this. The president made the right decision back then, and he stands by that. Hunter.
Thank you, Sean. Last week, officials indicated the Pentagon planned to send the president a proposal to send several thousand additional troops to Afghanistan. Can you confirm whether or not the president has made a decision about sending additional troops to Afghanistan? And if so, when are they going? How many are going? And what is their mission?
Yeah, I'll refer you to the Department of Defense on that. They are in contact with him, but we have nothing to share at this time. Sarah.
Thanks, John. The president tweeted this morning that senators on the Intelligence Committee should ask Sally Yates about her role in classified leaks about General Flynn. Does the president have evidence that ties Sally Yates to the Flynn leaks? Why did he tweet that?
Well, I think you guys are well aware of the president's concern about spills of classified and other sensitive information out into the open. It's something that should concern every American, and the president's made it very clear since he took office that's a big concern of his. And so the idea that classified information made its way into the press is something that I think, while we're asking all of these questions, is one of the ones that I think the senator should ask. How did that information get out into the open like that? I think that is an equally important question that frankly isn't getting asked.
But does the president believe that Sally Yates was the leaker in this?
Again, I think that the tweet speaks for itself. What he's saying is that the Senate should ask those questions. Yeah.
Sean, aside from the announcement today that the president will nominate 10 judges to fill federal vacancies, many conservatives remain concerned the White House is woefully behind on overall appointments. The president recently told the Examiner, paraphrasing, that he doesn't need to fill vacant posts in the administration. After these 10, there will still be 110 judicial vacancies. Does the president still believe vacant administration jobs do not need to be filled? And are there any plans to increase the pace of political appointments?
So there's like 3 questions in there. I'll try to break them down. Number one, we have a very robust schedule of releasing names. There is a method to this in terms of the nominees that are getting put out now, and I think you should expect to see more and more go through. The process this time around is a little bit different. We're actually going through the Office of Government Ethics and FBI clearances before announcing most of these individuals. And so there's a little bit of a difference in how we're doing this, but we are well on pace with respect to many of these to get the government up and running. But the president's point that he was making in that interview was that part of the review of government is to make sure that we're looking at these positions and figuring out whether or not we have the taxpayers getting the best bang for their buck, both in terms of productivity and cost. And so we're looking through the entire government. Director Mulvaney, I think, briefed you all a while ago about how we relook at government and figure out whether or not we can do a better job of filling positions, of staffing the government. But we're going to continue to have announcements on key positions as the week goes by.
Control to the bureaucracy if you don't fill some of
No,
these
we
top
are, and that's what I'm saying. I think that you're going to continue to see, whether it's judicial nominations, ambassadors, other key positions. I think we have a very healthy clip of announcements that continue to go out. Trey.
Thanks, Sean. Ahead of her testimony today, does President Trump believe Sally Yates is a trustworthy source of information?
Well, that's not up for us to decide. I mean, that is up to the Senate to decide whether or not what she does, and we'll have to wait and see what that.
And following up on Sarah's question, it seemed that the president was implying that Sally Yates may have had something to do with the leaked information to newspapers. Is that what he was implying?
Well, I think the tweet speaks for itself. Sometimes you don't have to read too much into it. Richard.
Thank you, Sean. 2 questions on NAFTA. First, the Canadian Prime Minister on Friday said that they're considering, as a reaction to what the Prime Minister calls an unfair punitive duty on Canadian softwood lumber,
right,
considering banning coal imports from the U.S. Is it the beginning of a trade war between Canada and the U.S.?
No, that's why we have dispute settlement mechanisms to do this in a responsible way. Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, has been in touch with his counterparts over there, and I think, look, there's a reason that the dispute mechanism is set up the way that it is under this particular trade agreement, but under most trade agreements, so that the two parties can resolve them in a way that allows for both sides to air their concerns. But that's why you have an agreement, and that's why you have a mechanism set up to do that.
So you trust the mechanism on this?
No, let's let it play out. But I think Secretary Ross took appropriate action to protect a U.S. industry, and we're going to let the process play out.
And 10 days ago, the president said that Mexico and Canada had agreed to fasten the process to renegotiate NAFTA. What has happened in the last 10 days?
Well, I think our officials will start to. We'll have further updates for you on that. Right now, there's nothing to share. John.
Thanks a lot, Sean. Did Sally Yates have to run any of her planned testimony by the General Counsel's office that she'll deliver later this afternoon?
I'm not aware of it, no.
And also, do you have any reason to doubt that her testimony, which will be under oath, will be truthful before the Senate subcommittee?
I have no, I mean, no, I would assume that when you raise your right hand and agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, that you'll do that. That's the whole reason that you pledge. Francesca.
Thank you, Sean. For weeks during the transition, President Trump was not receiving a daily intelligence briefing. He was receiving his information from General Flynn. Do you think that lack of direct information from the intelligence community contributed to the lapse in vetting with General Flynn?
So first, he did get his, I mean, we extensively went over the PBD briefing throughout the campaign. I believe back then it was 3 times a week that he was getting it, and then supplanted by his national security team. They would go in and do that. So I think the premise is not there. Secondly, as I mentioned to Kristen, the processes that were followed by General Flynn are followed by every government employee who receives a clearance at that particular level.
Sorry. On another thing, I wanted to talk about the signing statement that came out on Friday with the spending bill. Senior administration officials, including Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, didn't seem to know about that. Why didn't she or people working on that issue know about that, know it was coming? Whose idea was that? And what happened between when Sarah was out here on Friday saying that she didn't think there was going to be something like that, and then close of business when there was a signing statement? And did you know it was coming?
So signing statements are a pro forma activity that occurs during a bill signing that's performed by the Department of Justice, Office of the Legislative Counsel. It's been used by every president. So I'm not really sure what everyone knew, but that is something that goes along going back multiple administrations.
Can I follow with that on HBCUs from that signing statement, please?
Cecilia.
Thanks, Sean. On the travel ban, a couple questions if I may. Back in February, the president said that lifting the travel ban would mean that many bad and dangerous people would be pouring in. Have you seen any evidence that that's been the case in the 3 months since this ban was lifted?
I think that's a question for the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, that's something you've been tracking.
No, I personally know, but I'd be glad to follow up with the Department of Homeland Security. I don't have anything at this time on that.
On this, in the same vein, if this White House is no longer calling this a Muslim ban, as the president did initially, why does the president's website still explicitly call for, quote, preventing Muslim immigration? And it says Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
I'm not aware of what's on the campaign website. You'd have to ask them. I know how we've talked about this from the first day of this administration as a travel ban that's in this country's national security interest, to make sure that people who are coming in here with the right motives and reasons, that we're having a public safety aspect to making sure that we're protecting our people. I think we've been very consistent since the first day of this administration on this.
Is it worth standing here, though, and completely disavowing the use of that phrase Muslim ban? I mean, if it's still on the website, if the president's words are being used against him in court today, is it worth you clarifying that once and for all?
I'm trying to figure out why I've been very clear. I don't think I need to clarify what we have said or what the president said. Since
it's coming up in court, and that's
I understand that, and that's frankly one of the reasons that we have concerns about how that's being interpreted, because I think the intent of the travel ban was very clear. I think it was something that the president made very clear in the filings that we have filed, why he did it, the motives for doing it, and he was very clear when he spoke about it from the beginning. So there really shouldn't be any question as to why the president's doing this, and the idea of making sure that we're putting the safety of our country and our people first and foremost. So, Tamara.
Thank you. I've got 2 topics, hopefully fast.
Okay.
So the Kushner family was in China making a pitch for the EB-5 visa program. This came a day after the president signed the omnibus, which of course extended that program without any changes. So two questions on that. One, is it a violation of the conflict of interest agreement that Jared Kushner came to? And also, does the president believe that that investor visa program needs to be modified in any way?
So I think I would refer you to the company on that. I don't. But this had Jared has done everything to comply with the ethics rules to make sure, and that had nothing to do with him per se. He wasn't involved. And secondly, I think we've talked about this before, that the president and Congress are looking at how to look over the entire visa program, all the various visa programs, and whether or not they are serving the purpose that they were intended to, whether or not we're making sure that we do what's in the best interest of the American worker. And so we're going to continue to work with Congress on that.
Okay, and regarding the opioid commission, it's my understanding that no members of that commission have been named yet. We're more than 30 days into what was supposed to be a 90-day period for that commission to come back with a report to the president. What's up with that, and does that send the wrong signal to people who believe that this is a very urgent crisis where like more than 100 people are dying every day?
Right. Well, let me get back to you on the exact names and the announcement on that. I've got a follow up with that. I think when it comes to the opioid crisis, the president, both during the campaign, the transition, and now as president, has made it very clear of his commitment to figuring out how we can address this crisis that plagues so many neighborhoods and communities, and he'll continue to work with, he appointed Governor Christie in a bipartisan commission. So as soon as we have additional information on that, we will do that. Kevin.
Why is it important for the president to get these 10 individuals out there to serve the country? And on a more broader perspective of this question, there are a number of vacancies, 129 going into the day, to say nothing of some of the openings over there in the EOB that I'm sure could still be filled. The pace seems slow. Is the president aware of that pace? Is he comfortable with the pace? And what's the White House doing, not just to fill those important judicial jobs, but others that are related to the administration?
So on the judicial jobs, obviously, we're going through it in a very methodical way. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of background that goes on in each of these in terms of the Office of Government Ethics, the FBI background check that goes on. And so they're all in the pipeline. I think you'll continue to see a very robust amount of announcements on not just the judicial front, but on several of the fronts. And we've been tracking where we are. I think we're well on pace with where previous administrations have been, some ahead, some a little behind. But we're doing a great job of filling those key positions and making sure that we get the right person for the right job.
Sean.
Steve.
I want to ask you a big picture question about Afghanistan. You were asked about troop levels and don't have an answer to that. But last week, the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan and Reconstruction painted a very grim picture. Security incidents through March reached the highest level in a decade. Civilian casualties were the highest on record. There's rampant drug use in Afghanistan. So as the president weighs this request for more troops, what's going to be his ultimate goal? Is it going to be stability? Is it outright victory in the 16th, 17th year of this war?
Well, I think number one, he wants to make sure that we defeat ISIS. That is something that is in our national security interest. Make sure that we protect our people, but does so in a very responsible, smart way. I mean, he's talked about not projecting, where he's going and what he's going to do to let the enemy know ahead of time. And part of that guidance and that his national security team is giving him are different pieces that you're talking about. How do we achieve those key outcomes? How do we do what's in the country's best interest and utilize our military and our treasure to the best of our ability? That is something that we're continuing to work on and do, and that's part of what he is getting briefed on and is implementing. It's so I'm not entirely sure if that answers what you're going, but that is what he has been getting briefed on, and that is the kind of decision-making process that is currently underway.
Is the president displeased with the current state of affairs in Afghanistan?
Well, I think he wants to make sure that we do what we can to win, and that's why he charged the generals and other military advisors and national security team to come up with a plan that can get us there. So, Ronica?
Sean, thank you. Does the president believe that healthcare is a right or a product?
Well, I think the president's been very clear in his statements that whether or not you call it a right or not, he wants every person to have access to health care that covers pre-existing conditions, that is affordable. And I think the steps that he's taken over the last week in the bill that he's implemented, that he worked to pass through the House, clearly highlight those priorities. He wants to make sure that people have access to care. He is concerned when he hears about companies leaving the marketplace and not giving consumers a choice. He is concerned when he hears about deductibles going through the roof, costs going through the roof, and people not having the access that they can to healthcare. And he is very concerned that we are facing a choice right now where Obamacare is failing and dying, and that if we don't act, that people won't have access to healthcare and they won't be able to afford it. And so the steps that he is taking are to achieve those principles that he's laid out. Like,
two questions as it relates to President Trump and former President Obama. Back to that November conversation, were there specific reasons given, and if so, as it relates to Michael Flynn, and if so, was that based on private information?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that, like I said, he passed along exactly what I mentioned to Kristen at the outset, and that's all I got.
Sean, secondly.
Michael.
Two clarifications. On the signing statement, broadly, not just the subject of the HBCUs, are you saying that the president was not aware of the details of that very long signing statement? It was just something done at OLC? And
No, that's not, I'm sorry. No, the president's obviously aware of what happened. The question that was asked is, it is a process. It is happened for administrations going back, generations, I'm sure. I don't have this precise nature of when signing statements came into being, but this is a normal pro forma piece that goes along with a bill signing to make sure that the executive branch's intent is as understood.
But a lot of the things that were in that signing statement were things that were essentially carryovers from things that Obama had also objected to. And so, but the president and the senior staff here was aware of what those things were and approved those things being in the signing statement. Okay. Second question on the Flynn and the security clearances. You guys have made, both from the podium here and also the president made a big deal of this question of the Obama people gave him the clearance or re-upped the clearance earlier. Are you suggesting now, knowing what you guys know with hindsight and whatever, are you saying that they should have, you believe that the Obama administration should have denied him his clearance back in April based on the information that you're now aware of, connections with Russia, et cetera, et cetera? Are you suggesting that they should have denied it?
No, what I'm suggesting is that you can't have it both ways. The folks who are coming out and saying Obama, expressed some concern about Flynn. Well, number one, it was pretty expected. This is a guy who was very outspoken in his criticism of President Obama's policies. So the idea that President Obama didn't like the guy doesn't seem shocking. But the point that you have to ask yourself is, if the Obama administration, or under the Obama administration, if they reissued one of the highest security clearances that you can get, knowing what they knew then, and then didn't do anything to take a proactive steps to suspend it in any way, shape, or form, the question you have to ask yourself is, if they were concerned, why didn't they take any steps? They're the ones who had, at that point, all the access and all the knowledge to everything that was on his SF-86 security clearance, not us. So if President Obama or anyone else, frankly, in the government was concerned, the question should be asked, what did they do? And if nothing, then why not, if they really truly were concerned? I think that is a fair question. Dave.
Over the weekend, North Korea detained a fourth U.S. citizen. Are you concerned that they're trying to escalate tensions even further? Do you consider these Americans hostages? And what are you doing diplomatically, back channel or otherwise, to try and get them released?
Yeah, obviously this is concerning. We're well aware of it, and we're going to work through the Embassy of Sweden that has a facility in North Korea, or an embassy in North Korea, through our State Department to seek the release of the individuals there. But I would refer you to the State Department on that.
Sean, thanks very much. Just to follow up on your answer on Afghanistan, you mentioned ISIS, but you didn't mention the Taliban. Should we read that to mean that the focus will be on ISIS?
No, it's to defeat both the ISIS and Taliban. It's to make sure that we put our national security interests first and defeat all of those folks that seek to do us harm.
Are you willing to negotiate with the Taliban?
I think right now the whole point of this is the president is receiving a plan and guidance from his national security team as he had asked for. That guidance is coming forward as we speak. He's continuing to meet with them, and there will be further updates from the Department of Defense as we move forward. As I mentioned at the outset, the president or the vice president has an event. I want to make sure the pool has time to set for it. We're around all afternoon. I will take care. Good to see you. Thank you.
The president said
So a relatively quick White House press briefing here with Sean Spicer. Thanks for watching. If you're with us on Facebook, I'm watching your comments. Some of you asking how many press secretaries President Obama had. He had 3 in total over his 8 years. Right now we have Sean Spicer, of course, as press secretary under President Trump, and the deputy, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, filled in for him last Friday, so that's what we were watching on Friday. But if you heard, our reporter Ronica Cleary was there. She got to ask a question asking Sean if he thought President Trump thinks healthcare is a right. So definitely an interesting question. Sean went on to talk about what President Trump thinks of healthcare in general and what people should have access to. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Continue to watch us here on Facebook, and you can always catch our web stories to be updated and our live events here on the page, and check in with our YouTube channel, Fox 5 DC. You can check there for all the live events and coverage of that with myself hosting. So thanks guys for watching. Leave your comments below and check in with us later on. All right, guys, I'm back in the newsroom here. It's Molly. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for joining us on our stream. We just had Sean Spicer there, the White House press briefing, relatively short briefing today. And also concurrently right now, what we have going on is FBI Director James Comey. He's making some remarks at the Anti-Defamation League Summit. It's happening right here in downtown DC at the Mayflower Hotel. If you guys are familiar, that's downtown area in DuPont Circle. Old, historic, beautiful hotel right here in DC, and Fox is there with coverage of this. I think actually C-SPAN is taking it, and we're grabbing it from them. But he's there making a few remarks. I want to show you him for just a second here. Let's jump into his already in progress speech here at the Mayflower.
Wiretap Martin Luther King. It's 5 sentences long, and it's utterly without factual content. It simply asserts, quote, there's a communist influence in the racial situation, close quote. There's no date limitation, there's no geographic limitation, there's no technique limitation. It simply says we need to wiretap this guy. Director Hoover signed it, Bobby Kennedy signed it, and we were off to the races. But here's the hard part. I'm not telling this story, and I don't keep that document there as a criticism to pick on Hoover or Kennedy. I have no doubt that both of those men believed they were doing the right thing. They were certain that their cause was just and certain that their facts were right. And in the absence of constraint and oversight, there was no one to tell them otherwise. I keep that piece of paper in that spot to remind me of what we in the FBI are responsible for and what we as humans are capable of, and why it is vital that power be overseen and constrained, including my power and that of the FBI. We put those sessions, Holocaust Museum and the King curriculum, at the very beginning of our training program for analysts and agents. And the reason we start their education there is because we believe it is foundational. It tells us who we are and what we are. Learning the law and how to shoot and how to conduct an arrest in an appropriate way is really important stuff and hard. But it's much harder and more important, in our view, to understand and internalize the long-term ramifications of prejudice and bigotry, the value of oversight. It's much harder to fight against unconscious bias and the sting of subtle racism. These are more than just lessons to be learned. We believe they are living principles that have to be ingrained into everything that we do, become part of who we are. We have to build a deep understanding. We must know it. We must nurture it now so that it can save us later. Thank you for helping us be better in educating ourselves. Now I want to thank you for your work in community outreach. Because we work hard in the FBI not only to educate ourselves, again with your help, but to build bridges with your help to the communities we serve and protect. We are listening to people's concerns all over this country, and we are trying to let them know that we can help. We're trying to create a sense of trust, a sense of solidarity, so they know in hard times they can call us and they can count on us to protect them. We want them to know that when we can't prevent a hate crime, our agents and analysts will move heaven and earth to find those responsible and bring them to justice. And our victim specialists, who are the angels of the FBI, will do everything they can to help heal those who are suffering, their families, and their communities. They will explain what the agents need to do, why they're doing the things that they're doing. They will host town halls for frightened citizens. They will clean up crime scenes. And if you have never seen the painstaking work that goes into restoring the items, the clothing, the furniture, the rooms of loved ones so they don't see the stain of that crime, it's an extraordinary thing. They will plan funerals. They will find counseling. They will wipe away tears. I call them the angels of the FBI because they carry this tremendous weight that they lift from the victims onto themselves. They do it for people who are living their own worst nightmare. We are not just law enforcement. We are part of the community. We are in this together. We understand that some of the communities that we work in don't fully trust law enforcement. They may not believe that we in law enforcement have their best interests at heart. And that's something painful, but that we in law enforcement have to confront. It's something we need to understand deep down and work to change. Everybody in this room knows that officers and deputies and agents signed up for this work because they want to do good for other people. They want to help other people, no matter what they look like, no matter what they believe, no matter who they love. They signed up to help all the people all the time. But we have to do a better job of not just explaining that to the communities we serve and protect. We need to do a better job of understanding those communities, especially those with the greatest need for police. We need to know the people who live there, the challenges they confront, the fears that they have, the hopes that they have. As law enforcement officers, we especially need a full understanding of the history and journey of Black America. The hopes, the dreams.
Guys, if you're still with us, I'm going to bring you over to something else that is live and breaking right now in Boston. I don't know if you guys read about this. There was a shooting, a murder of two doctors. They're married over the weekend, and it seems to be a pretty crazy, brutal attack that happened. They were pretty accomplished local doctors, an engaged couple rather, sorry, not married, and they were killed in a chaotic attack in South Boston. Now, the suspect who was involved in this is a 30-year-old person, a male with a criminal history. And right now up in Boston, we're getting more information on the whole case, hearing from some of the doctors. It looks like they're in a hospital. Let's go up to this live video just to listen in to see what we can hear.
Describing a gunman in the house and a request for assistance, a plea for help, if you will, Your Honor. That witness later provided a copy of the text that he had received and gave a recorded statement to Boston police detectives in the ongoing investigation as to what happened on May 5th, 2017. Shortly thereafter, Your Honor, operations dispatched police units to 141 Dorchester Avenue in South Boston. Responding police officers went upstairs to Mr. Field and Ms. Bolanos's unit, which was located on the 11th floor. And once there, they observed a set of keys on the floor in front of the apartment door. Responding officers, Your Honor, began knocking and announcing their office that they were the Boston police multiple times, and receiving no response, they used the set of keys that they saw on the floor to gain entry to the apartment. They physically opened the door. As the officers entered the apartment, they found the lights to be off. While performing or starting to perform a protective sweep of that apartment, Your Honor, an officer encountered a black male dressed in dark clothing. In the ensuing moments, Your Honor, there was an exchange of gunfire. Other officers who had not entered the apartment at that time heard gunfire as well, and they wound up discharging their weapon at the man that was being fired upon. That particular individual is the defendant who's before you today, Mr. Bumpamim Teixeira. he was apprehended by police officers outside of the apartment. Responding officers, Your Honor, observed Mr. Teixeira to be wounded to his left hand, abdomen, and leg. The police officers also observed that Mr. Teixeira was wearing dark-colored gloves at the time. Medical assistance was rendered to Mr. Teixeira at that particular time outside of the unit. Teixeira told police officer who had responded that there was another individual in the building that would open gunfire if they went in. Mr. Teixeira was treated by Boston EMS on scene and ultimately transported to this hospital where we are today. Shortly thereafter, Your Honor, the Boston Police entry team who had been notified was used to gain entry into the apartment, and once inside, that entry determined that there were two people within the apartment. Lena, later identified as Lena Bolanos, age 38, and Richard Field, age 50. Both individuals, Your Honor, were bound and both were deceased, having sustained obvious trauma. Emergency personnel examined both bodies and declared both to be non-viable at the scene. Just inside the apartment door, Your Honor, a black backpack was located in a remarkably conspicuous area. I would describe it as that. Inside of that backpack, Your Honor, was filled with jewelry, presumably belonging to Ms. Bolanos. Those are the basic facts, Your Honor. With respect to his record, you can see that although brief, he was recently released from custody after having been convicted of a larceny. Your Honor, based on the nature and circumstances of the offense, the potential penalty, the fact that Mr. Teixeira is on probation right now, having recently completed a sentence, we would ask that he be held without bail. And I do have an additional motion for the court's consideration.
Your Honor, I am not going to argue bail at this time. I've had a brief time to speak with Mr. Teixeira. You can see his physical condition is not great. I haven't been able to talk with him as much as I'd like to. So, but I have spoken with him. We would agree that he be held without bail. I would only note that he's charged with the 2 counts of murder, but nothing else at this time. I'm also going to make a request, and that is that he be held without bail. As long as he's going to be held without bail on the murder charges, that he be held without bail on a probation warrant from the Boston Municipal Court. On, I believe it's docket number 1602 CR 5027.
Thank you. Any further motions to be heard?
I'll waive argument, Your Honor. My understanding is that there's no objection from Mr. Sack on the motion that's been filed by the Commonwealth. I provided him the documentation in the reports that are the subject of the motion, so there's no issue there today, Your Honor. Yet I'd ask that the court impose a 90-day expiration date for the motion if you're inclined to allow it.
Counsel?
I take no position on it.
Held without on bail, detained without on the probation.
You guys are watching a live arraignment of this suspect on charges of the double murder on Friday night. It all happened Friday night around 8 o'clock in South Boston. 2 doctors slain, quite gruesomely, I'm reading, and they were engaged as well, an engaged couple. This man right here, who is the suspect in the hospital bed, has a criminal history, so looks like we will see what will become of these charges, but all this happening live from this hospital here in his hospital bed, the live arraignment in Boston.
Your Honor, I have filed a motion for cost. I'd also ask that that be allowed, and I'd also ask that that be impounded. He has been declared to be indigent. Any money that I spend at this point should not be a public record. If he was a private person, a private citizen who could afford costs, nobody would know about it, so I would ask that that be impounded.
Have you heard, Mr. Smith?
I don't know. by agreement, Your Honor, if it's amenable to the court, we're asking for June 8th as the first 30-day date.
June 8th. Anything further?
Not from the Commonwealth, Your Honor. Thank you.
Set?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Texier on docket 1703 CR 337. The docket will reflect that the Commonwealth's motion to impound certain documents, as well as the defense counsel's motion for an investigator, will be allowed by the court, and those orders are to be impounded. With respect to this matter, you're being held without bail. There's a probable cause date scheduled for June 8th, 2017. You do have a right to have your bail reviewed in Superior Court, but are advised that should you make bail and be charged with another crime during the pendency of this matter, you can be held without bail for a period of time not to exceed 90 days.
Okay.
The docket will also, sorry, did I mention that the probation detainer has also, you'll be held without bail on the probation matter, which is pending out of the BMC. That docket number is 1601 CR 5027.
Thank you. Anything further?
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll be in recess.
So it looks like he received his court date for that. If you guys haven't been up on that news, it was 2 gruesome killings on Friday night. 2 doctors, an engaged couple, were found with their throats slit on an 11th floor penthouse in South Boston. I think details are still coming out about how access was gained to that penthouse, but there was also a message of retribution apparently written on the wall. So quite a gruesome scene. I'm sure more details will be coming out of that, and that case will continue, and his court date is set. So an interesting case there. Okay, I'm going to switch gears totally and bring you over to a new thing to round out our show just lastly here. Okay, so people have been talking about this new kind of trend, and I will tell you, I got to engage in it myself this past weekend. So if you're still watching with me, thanks for hanging out for this last little video that I'm going to bring you. One of our photojournalists, Chip Bays, into this awesome package on goat yoga. It's a new trend that I had actually seen a report on from Oregon, a smaller town kind of outside of Portland called Albany, Oregon, originally put together a sort of, or at least the station there put together a little package on this because it was just sort of a new trend to bring you into the outdoors, surrounded by animals, finding your own mindfulness and meditation amidst farm life. And so when it came over to the East Coast, a lot of stations started talking about it, started putting together some videos on it. So I'm going to bring you this video that was put together by our photojournalist just to give you a little intro into this farm that I got to see this weekend. It was totally cool, and I'd planned it. I really wanted to go, so I dragged a friend from college along with me. Check out what it looks like in this very professional put together video, and then I'll show you some of my own personal pictures. So give it a second right here.
This is your second time seeing it. The neighbors, they have no idea what's going on here. Yeah, they think we're some sort of hippie commune, I think. I paid online. Yep. What's going on here? My son is down there to let people through the gate. I'm Alicia McMaster with Silver Maple Farm out in Berryville, Virginia. The crazy goat lady. She knows her goats. We are doing goat yoga. Exhale as you draw the arms back down.
And 1. Exhale, release down. Continuing to breathe here. 4, 3, and 2, and 1. And we hold. Just the idea of it sounded so much fun.
Last fall, my friends on Facebook were forwarding me these crazy looking videos of other people doing goat yoga.
I'd never heard of it.
A lot of my friends knew that I had goats.
I didn't believe her right away. Totally thought she was joking with me. Like, you're kidding, right? That's not a real thing.
It is a thing. I think one just opened in the UK recently.
She's like, no, it is.
There's a couple other places in the United States.
And I'm like, gosh, this is legit.
Yeah, it's spreading. It's great.
Both legs are still grounded. Try to be as straight as possible and let this knee not cave in. Extended triangle.
We have a milking operation here. They're all Nigerian dwarf goats, and they give us milk for our family, and we make soap and fudge. They're kind of like dogs, very individual personalities on each of them. Some are more playful, some are a little bit more laid back.
They're very social. They love to be pet.
They love people. They really like to be up underneath people. Some goats really like to nibble on toes, especially toes that have polish on them.
It's not a bite.
Some people might enjoy that and other people might not so much.
They like to nibble and there's no teeth.
Pulling on hair, they're obsessed with hair, so I always keep mine up. Almost all the goats out there are females, except the babies, and there are a couple of babies out there that are bucklings, boys. Yeah, you wouldn't want the bucks, the adult boys. They're actually very sweet, but they smell.
Start moving your body in conjunction with your breath. Roll forward as you reach.
They love the yoga mats.
They just curl up and make themselves comfortable.
They think it's their own personal bed or something. We've had a couple people that as soon as they get through the gate, it's one track. They're headed for those goats, and they want to play with them and love on them.
More of a playful, enjoy nature energy than what you get in a class. If people want to sit down and just play with the goats, it's great. If people want to take pictures, great. Versus me being concerned about everybody following a certain sequence or being okay in each pose.
Guys are just adorable. Goat massage.
Yeah, I had And a lot of people who drove, all of them said the same thing. It was even peaceful just driving out, getting out of the city and getting into the country.
Listen to the birds, feel the grass under your feet, play with some goats, and de-stress at the same time.
That's the whole thing, just being in the moment, enjoying, and it's meant to be a way to relax, to unwind, and the combination between being outside with the goats and the beautiful weather, and just it's a beautiful combination. We would have never guessed that this would have been something, you know, such an amazing opportunity. Option 3, extend the leg. Make yourself comfy.
What you don't see at home is Matt Slusher, our floor director, was in here talking about growing up on a goat farm and just likening that to never seeing that growing up.
Yeah, no, I mean, they are very friendly, but
Yeah.
I think that's more of a petting zoo than a yoga class.
Yeah, they get distracted easily by that.
So that was the little bit from our evening show when they put this package on the air, and you could see the anchors kind of bantering about it. And it's kind of true. I got to visit the farm, and it was a really cool experience. And I want to show you a little bit of the behind the scenes that I got there. And she was right. Sarah was right there talking about how it was kind of like a petting farm because you are kind of distracted by these animals while you're trying to practice. So I'm going to go through a few of my photos, and then we're going to round the show out for good today. But check it out here. Here's a video that I got of April. You saw her in the package earlier talking about the practice.
Modify or alternate poses.
And here she is kind of talking about the poses and sort of what she expects or will encourage people to do throughout the practice.
If you decide you just want to break from the yoga and want to sit and play with the goats, I'm okay with it. Okay, this is a very, playful and just open to nature practice. At the end, we usually end in a pose called Savasana, which is where we just lay down and completely relax. Now that we've done this a few times, some people are really ready to go and just want to lay there and relax. Other people want to sit and just start playing with the goats. So I'm going to give you options, which is a little different. For those of you who have been in the studio before, it's not usually ever an option, but I'm going to give you options.
All right, guys, we're going to finish up with this story on tomorrow's show, so I'll bring that back with you guys if you're still with me. I know it's the video's a little bit tough right now and it's buffering for some people, so instead of continuing to stream, we'll do this again tomorrow. So don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube and join us every day for weekday coverage and live events here on Fox 5 Live. I'm Nevola. That's going to do it for us. We'll leave you with a beautiful shot of the Capitol Dome with the clouds behind it today in Washington. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care until tomorrow.